What's up, Metal Summoners? It is super duper great to see you guys as always for a very special episode of the Metal Summit in the afternoon. We really appreciate you guys rocking out with us, supporting the band, supporting all the musicians, and all the great conversations that myself and Angel get to have. So we're going to jump right into everything, wishing you guys an absolutely happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, everything that you guys celebrate for this special Christmas edition of the Metal Summit. As you guys are aware, we're typically a Wednesday show, but we didn't want to cost anybody the time with their families. So for myself, for our beloved Angel Alamo, and for Psycho Steve, who shall be joining us very shortly, we are going to jump right into drummer extraordinaire, giving us some of his afternoon today, Rob Hammersmith. First and foremost, thank you so much, my friend. Thank you for giving us a little bit of your time. Welcome to the Metal Summit, and I hope this holiday week has been treating you good so far.
It's been great. It's been great. Thank you guys for having me. I know we had to do a little rearranging of the schedule, so I really appreciate you guys taking time and making it work. This is gonna be great. We're gonna talk some shit and have some fun. So this is gonna be great.
Absolutely, man, 100%. Well, first and foremost, again, thank you again. And how's everything currently going in the Skid Row camp? I can imagine that you guys are probably taking a little bit of time when it comes to the holiday season, but what can you tell us as far as what you're able to announce about how the rest of 2024 shaped up for you and what we're looking forward to in 2025?
Yeah, so to kind of go back a few months, most of your viewers may know we were fortunate enough to be able to do some shows with our good friend Lizzie Hale post Eric Gromwald's departure. Unfortunately, earlier this year when Eric left the band, we were kind of in a situation where we had to figure out relatively quickly what the rest of the year was going to look like. So we were able to do some shows late spring, early summer with our good friend Lizzie Hale. So no tour dates since those shows earlier this year. We are still in an active search for the next lead singer of Skid Row. We've had some really strong candidates. At this point, no news, no official announcements. As I said, we are still in the midst of a proper search, if you will. But we're making progress. We're getting there. So unfortunately, no concrete announcements. All of that said, we like to keep it out there in the rock and metal world. Any ideas are welcome at this point. So singers out there, if you think you're right, you know where to find us for sure. So we will break for the holidays, and then we will reconvene in January and move forward with that process. But as anybody knows, it's a long process, and it always takes longer than you would like for it to take. So we'll see. Hopefully early next year we'll have some big announcements for everybody.
Absolutely. Definitely look forward to hearing that for sure. That's going to be super duper awesome when those announcements do come out. Rob, if you don't mind, with this question, completely draped around the utmost respect for it. I just feel like Angel and I and Steve wouldn't be doing our jobs correctly without asking it. When you got to do it, right? The current, when you look at the current situation and the long established wonderful history of Skid Row and yourself now being a longtime member, and of course the band that established it and the various members there, when you look at a situation like you've gone through recently where it's been a little tricky to hold down the front man slot for an overly extended amount of time, how do you guys as the veterans and core of that band, look at it when you have to have that conversation?
So that's a really good question. It's an interesting question. So there's so many different factors. I say anybody that's ever been in a band, but it's not exclusive to being in the music industry. This is really true with really any situation in life, whether it's a marriage, a relationship, or any other industry. There's so many different factors involved. So for us, we certainly look back on some of our past experiences, myself included. I've been with the band for 15 years now. Longest job I've ever held. I don't know how I pulled this off, but here I am talking to you guys 15 years later. So we really did want to take a minute to say to ourselves and then to each other, how do we really want to go about doing something like this in a way that maybe we can do it differently than we've done in the past. So for us, that's been an ongoing process. How do you try to account for all of these different criteria and these things that you have to look for, and knowing the whole time that you're doing something like this with a potential candidate for a situation like ours, they're evaluating us as well. So everybody comes to the table with their own different set of criterias. It's been a really interesting process. You really have to sit down and examine, as a band, what are your goals? What is important to you? What do you envision the future of your band looking like? And in a lot of ways, that's been good for us to really sit down and define exactly where we see the band in 5 years or in 10 years or in 15 years, God willing. It's been a really interesting experience. And hopefully I'm doing a good job of answering your question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so for us, it was really the beginning of that process was to really sit down as an organization, as a unit, and decide, okay, where do we want to go from here? And then from there you can start to come up with plans, and in any other business, or like any other business, you sort of have to have a business plan. But for us, the biggest thing was really sitting down and saying, okay, what do we want to do over the next 5 years or the next 10 years? That was the biggest part of the process for us. And then from there, putting that out into the public, into culture, however that works these days, whether it's social media, the internet, things like that. So that was kind of the next step after we really decided, okay, this is what we as a band envision our future looking like. We just jumped right in and started looking. And sometimes, like anything in life, you're just figuring it out as you go. So you kind of make some adjustments along the way. That's really in an overview. I think that was the biggest part of the process for us, is really coming together as a unit. And again, I hope that does a good job of answering the question.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And one more thing for myself before I kick it over to Angel is, as congratulations are in order, while it's been out for a moment now, but as far as your presence on our show, we get to discuss it. But again, congratulations are in order for the most recent Skid Row record. And
thank you.
As you look back at that, how did it feel, getting that out to the public? And how do you remember looking back on the reception that it received?
So, you're referring to the last studio recording? Yes. Or the live record? Okay. So for some of the viewers,
kind of a combination of both, because the live album's like a live record, but then it's always excited to get a fresh studio record out.
Yeah. So the last studio recording was, if my memory is correct, and you guys will definitely know better, my memory is not my best quality. October of 2022. Yep. So what's interesting about that record, we're all very proud of the record. We all had a really fun experience making that record with producer Nick Raskulinecz, who really was able to come in and pull something out of us that we were hoping that we would have an experience to work with somebody like that could really focus our efforts. And one thing I've always said about Skid Row and the core members of this band, the work ethic is incredible. Everybody is incredibly hardworking and committed, but sometimes you need someone to kind of steer you in a particular direction. And that was Nick Raskulinecz for us. He was wonderful to work with. He was really good at focusing us as a band. So when I look back on the making of that album, that's my biggest, or I shouldn't say my biggest, but my fondest memory was having the opportunity to work with somebody like that. His resume, it speaks for itself. The bands and the artists that he has worked with in the past, you don't compile a list of bands and artists like that if you don't know what you're doing in the studio. So to see him work firsthand, he and everybody around him were they were so much fun to work with. They're fascinating people. You're learning things even when you don't realize you're learning things. You're watching all these people work at a completely different level. So that was I think my fondest memory really would have to be the opportunity to work with somebody like that. So hopefully we'll have the chance to do it again at some point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely, man. For sure, my friend. Angel, let's kick it over to you for a little bit, my man.
I want to say, man, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
I got a question that's going to go way, way back.
Okay.
The first drum kit that you ever bought.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So this does go way, way back. I don't want to do the math for everybody. I'll leave that to your imagination. So I was a kid if memory serves, I was in the 6th grade, but within my family, there's a little bit of we have a different set of math. So I'm not 100% sure that it was in the 6th grade, but it was either 6th or 7th grade. I remember my dad actually getting me out of school early one day, and we drove to a music store in Buffalo, New York. And I was able to, with money I had saved on my own and with my parents' help, I bought a Maxwin by Pearl drum kit. So for any of you drummers out there, you may remember Maxwin. I mean, they were about as entry level as it got back then. But I can picture it as though it were still sitting right here next to me. I remember buying that drum kit when I was a little kid, and I just absolutely fell in love right away. To the point, I wish I still had that kit. I have no idea what I did with it at some point throughout the year. I probably traded it for, I don't know, a skateboard or a dirt bike or something, a dirt bike that didn't run. But that was my first drum kit. So if anybody out there has an old Maxwin by Pearl drum kit in the Buffalo area, let me know, because it might be mine. Yeah.
As far as favorite drummers, can you talk about some of your favorite drummers and records or songs that actually influenced you?
Okay. So the song that, and later the band and the drummer that I feel has been the biggest influence on me is Phil Rudd from AC/DC. And when I say that, the reason I say that is when I was a kid, so I mentioned being a young kid and having this set of drums and not really knowing what I was doing. I was kind of just like a lot of kids, you have this vision or this idea of this thing that you want to do, and you just jump right in. You don't want to be told that you don't know what you're doing when you're a kid. You just want to jump in and do it. So shortly after I got this set of drums, I had some friends I grew up in a small town outside of Buffalo, New York, and I had a few friends, some of which were 2 and 3 years older than I was, who had already been playing. Some had been playing guitar and playing in bands. So I had a friend in the small town that I grew up in who came to my house one night. It was freezing cold in the garage, and we set up the drums. He set up his guitar amp, and he played Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution from AC/DC. And he said, okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to learn this song. And at the time, it was perfect for me, because if you listen to it, it sounds very basic and it sounds very simple. It wasn't until years later that I realized the genius of Phil Rudd's playing is, yeah, it sounds basic and simple, but very few of us, if any of us, can make it sound like Phil Rudd makes it sound. So that was lost on me at the time. I was just a kid. But that was the first moment that I felt like I could actually do this. I could hear what was happening in the music, and it sounded accessible to me. It sounded possible. And I don't know if that is the right word, but I just remember hearing it and saying, okay, I understand what's happening here. Again, I'm not saying that I could play it well, but that was the drummer And the song that I really latched onto it for the very first time, and as I said, it wasn't until much later that I realized, well, Phil Rudd's brilliant for so many other reasons. It wasn't just because of what seems to be a simple or a basic drum part. There's so much going on there for all of us drum nerds out there. But that was really the moment. So for that reason, AC/DC and Phil Rudd have been a massive influence on me throughout my entire playing career. I always kind of the less is more approach, the don't waste any notes, play what's right for the song. If you make it feel good, then the other stuff can kind of fall into place from there. You don't have to be super technical. You don't have to be flashy. Although I appreciate and absolutely love players who can do that and do it well. That wasn't the path that I started down after I heard those early AC/DC records. So for me, that was the biggest influence when I was a kid. And then from there, it got into John Bonham and some of the other drummers. My top 5 list is probably very similar to a lot of other drummers, and not because it's cliche, but if it is cliche, it's cliche for a reason. There's a reason everybody mentions John Bonham. Mickey Curry is another one for me. When I was growing up, listening to a lot of music that was happening in the the mid 80s and then through the late 80s, you start to pick up on things and you realize, oh, this guy Mickey Curry is on tons of different records that I'm hearing, and these songs that they sound really good. And then we didn't have the internet back then, but when you start reading a little bit and doing a little bit of researching or reading liner notes, you start seeing these names popping up all over the place. And Mickey Curry was another one of those guys for me. He was a huge influence. Who else? I was really into a lot of the late 80s hard rock stuff, but also a lot of the punk rock stuff, Ramones, Sex Pistols, things like that. So that's kind of the that's kind of the time I fell in love with it. So I'd have to say that a lot of those hard rock drummers of that era were big influences on me.
And I got a question from a fellow drummer.
All right.
Mike Dover, man, thanks for joining us, brother. As a drummer, what song from the old catalog gave you the hardest time to learn? When I played with Sebastian, it was Frozen for some reason.
Okay, well, that's a good one. So for a period of time off the same album, Subhuman Race, we did Medicine Jar live, and I've said this numerous times throughout my tenure with the band. The original drummer, Rob Fuso, his playing on Subhuman Race is fantastic. For all you drummers out there, if you haven't listened to that record, there's a lot of people like to get in the chats and they like to get in the forums and argue over if the record's any good. And people do that with everything, and it's fun, right? But I'll tell you this, his playing on that album is fantastic. So when we did, for a period of time, we did Medicine Jar live, and there's a lot of really cool drum stuff going on in that song, and it's stuff that's a little bit different from my style, and some of it is a lot different than my style. So it took me a long time to get to where I eventually ended up with that song. I would have to say, of the catalog and of the songs that I have been fortunate enough to perform, Medicine Jar would probably be my biggest challenge. So for all your drummers out there, go back and let's start recording some YouTube covers of Medicine Jar, and we'll start comparing notes.
What equipment do you use, and what makes a good drumstick like really, really good?
Okay, that's it's funny. I actually had this a similar conversation with somebody. So to run down my list of gear real quick, Pearl drums. I've been in love with Pearl drums since, as I said to you, when I was a young kid. Pearl drums have been my first choice for many, many, many years. Sabian cymbals, Aquarian drum heads, Reunion Blues, gig bags. They make wonderful cymbal bags and all types of really cool accessories and things for drummers. Aquarian drum heads have been great. I absolutely love their products as well. So drumsticks for me, it's interesting. If you ask 10 drummers what makes a great drumstick, you're going to get 10 different answers, right? So for the longest time, I used Vader 5Bs, and I find that my preference is on the heavier side of a 5B. So what I mean by that is, so every drumstick manufacturer out there, or anybody who knows anything about the manufacturing process, there's a tolerance, and a lot of it has to do with moisture content. But wood being a natural organic thing, there are just natural variances in every piece of wood, and every drumstick kind of has its own. This sounds ridiculous, but it's almost like a snowflake, right? So the grain running through a drumstick, you can scrutinize the process, and with technology, there's so many things that they can do to really hone in on all these variables. But at the end of the day, every stick is slightly different. So within that range, I have figured out about myself, I tend to lean towards the heavier side. It just feels normal to me. I've been playing those sticks now for so long that it just, anything else feels feels like I don't know what I'm doing. So Vader 5Bs, but for me, within that range, what makes it more comfortable, I guess, I just feel a sense of relaxation. If I feel like the stick is a little on the heavier side, I feel a little bit more in touch with what's actually going on. If a stick is too light, I feel like I don't have any real sense of what's going on. And there's an interaction between the human body and a drumstick, and they're trying to communicate with each other. And on the heavier side, that works better for me. And they last longer. So there's that too. So you save a little bit of money.
I'm going to head it down to your fan club president.
Oh, boy.
The most handsome guy, according to People Magazine and all them other crap.
I must have missed that issue.
Me too. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think I got that issue delivered.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think my head could fit in the screen. Wow. I was
You
like,
believe
wow.
your own hype? Is that what's going on?
Wow. I didn't even pay you. I didn't even pay it for that.
I'm 15 minutes from you. I'm coming to collect it, to pick up the check.
That's okay. I'm in Woodbridge right now, so you can come here.
That's 15 minutes from my house, dude.
Right on. Okay, there you go. All right. So the question is, I've always wanted to know, how did the audition come about when you we're going to be joining Skid Row? I know you knew Rachel prior to joining.
Correct.
So did he say, hey, Dave Garrett's out like a fat kid in dodgeball. We need a drummer. Do you want to join? Or
it was slightly different than that. Although
Okay.
I'm going to remember that term.
Okay.
So I have a natural ability to take a short story and make it very long. So I'll try not to do that for all of your viewers out there. If you haven't figured that out by now, I have a tendency to make very long stories. So having known Rachel and worked with him on several studio projects and working in a band that he had produced, we were fortunate enough. My old band in Atlanta, I played in a band called Rockets to Ruin for many years here in Atlanta, and we were fortunate enough to open a handful of shows on Skid Row's Revolutions Per Minute tour, which was an album that they put out in 2006. So through those shows, I was able to. I had met the other guys in the band, and they had all seen me play, and we weren't as close as I was with Rachel, because he and I were working together. But they all had a chance to kind of get to know me and see me play, and they figured out what I was all about. So fast forward to 2010, they were looking to cover a few shows on drums, and I was approached about covering the gigs. So of course there's never a bad time to get a phone call like that, but for me it came at the perfect time, because I was between gigs at the moment and wasn't really sure what my next move was. So I was approached about covering 3 shows. I didn't ask a whole lot of questions as to what the situation was and why they needed somebody. I was just making sure I said yes, and said yes multiple times, and I had the set list, I had the dates and the information. That was really where my focus was. So we were able to, at the time, back in early 2010, Rachel Boland and I were both living in Atlanta, Georgia. So we brought the rest of the guys in. I think it was maybe 2 days before the first show. We did a rehearsal at Rachel's studio. Rachel had a studio in his house at the time. We did a rehearsal there, and we drove to Mississippi. And I wish I could remember the name. It was a casino gig in Mississippi. We drove, played the first show, came back. It was Monday. I got a call from the guys, and they said, okay, we had a great time the other night, and we expected to, but we just wanted to say we had a great time. The gig is yours if you want it. So that's really how that happened for me. I could make that story very long, but I would say it's a really good example in the music industry. But I think this is true with a lot of things as well. I think you're always auditioning for something, but you don't know what it is. So in those guys having the opportunity to see me play in other contexts and in other bands, there wasn't an official audition. It wasn't a formal sit down, this is your audition, you have 30 minutes, go impress us. It wasn't anything like that. It was really just I think Rob can do it. Let's see if Rob can do it. And so I was given an opportunity. The universe opened a door for me, and I got lucky. So looking back on it, that's how that all came together. And what's fun about that story, so we played the first show of what was supposed to have been 3 with a rehearsal. It may have been 2 rehearsals. I'm not sure. If it was 2, it was definitely no more than 2. And played the first show, came home Monday, and we had this phone call, and it was obviously a very big moment for me. So I didn't see the guys for a couple weeks, might have been 2 weeks. And next thing I'm on a plane flying over to Sweden to play a festival in front of 30,000 people. And I'm a kid playing in bands. I've been playing in bands my whole life, but I played in so many bands that nobody cared about. And I've been touring around and traveling and playing in bands. And I've had some fun gigs and some big gigs, but one rehearsal and then 2 weeks later going out and playing in front of 30,000 people, that was a whole different world for me, but it was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And a 2-part question. So speaking of auditioning, can we get some exclusive information? Because, I know you were just here in Dirty Jersey not too long ago.
Yeah.
At my brother from another mother, Mr. John Albino's
That's
awesome
right.
recording rehearsal studio.
Room is, as you know, that room is fantastic. We love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You did have some tryouts, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Have you guys whittled down the amount, or do we have, and we're not just going to make the announcement yet? Is there anybody that will be replacing the 7th singer for Skid Row?
That's So that's the summary. There will be somebody. We've had some incredibly talented people cross our paths. We have a couple of very strong candidates, but we are still in the midst of an active search.
Okay.
As I said earlier, all ideas are welcome at this point. We will reconvene after the holidays, and we'll start moving forward from there. We do have some strong candidates, but we're not calling off the search. That we are still in the middle of an active search. So that's the best announcement I can give you. I know everybody's waiting for the scoop. That's where we're at. That's the status report. So I wish it was a little bit more interesting than that, but that's where we are. Yeah.
Cool. Now, were you a Skid Row fan beforehand, before you joined the band?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I've been a fan from the first record on. That was, as I was saying earlier, that was kind of right that was kind of so the first record was 1989, but that was really at the time in my life, starting in the late 80s and then through the 90s. That was really when I made the commitment and decided, okay, I really do want to pursue music. I had no idea how to do that, but I had no clue how to do it. But that was at a time in my life where I really figured out this is something that I want to pursue. This is something that I want to go after. It was kind of still the golden age of MTV and all the excitement of all that stuff that was happening. So right out of the gate, I was absolutely a huge fan. That fell right into the culture and the stuff that I was into at that point in my life. And then obviously the second record being as cool as that was a big moment for me as well. So yeah, I've been following the guys for quite some time. So
Gotcha. So Angel, you have a chance to try out still. There you go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Look at that look of enthusiasm on his face.
He's like, I can't even carry a tune with even an iPod in my hand.
Yeah. Was that enthusiasm or sheer terror?
I would have the quickest audition. Yeah, I would have the quickest audition. Hit the one, they'll be like, next.
All right.
There you go.
Well, we're nice guys. We won't do that to you.
They'll say, please leave before we call the police. They'll use the please word.
Or please leave before we have Psycho Steve escort you out.
That's
Exactly.
right. That's right.
So,
Damn,
all right.
It's a sad day when Psycho Steve is the voice of reason and has to escort you out. That's a sad day.
That's a very sad. That's pathetic. If I have to escort you out. Fuck yeah. All right. Jay, back to you, bud.
Totally, man. So, Rob, just kind of like a fun question that kind of piggybacks off the segment that you were having with Angel that kind of got my gears turning, because I just think it'd be kind of fun. Obviously, when in a live setting, you know, equipment wears down and breaks, whether it be strings, and I'm sure that, you know, Scotty and Rachel and Snake all have their fun moments. Have you found that there tends to be a song that just seems to like just be the death of your drumsticks on the regular?
That's a really good question. No, I haven't noticed per song. No, that's a really good question. So I can tell you. So if we do a proper tour, so for us, typically, if we're gonna do, maybe we'll go over to Europe, summer European tour or something like that. It could be anywhere around a month, give or take. But I do notice throughout the month, in the beginning, and I play drums at home, and I play drums as much as I can at home, but there's no substitute for going out on stage and playing in a live setting. It's just a completely different thing. So you play differently, and there are different, whether it's adrenaline or the volume difference, whatever it is. I caught on, I always start the tour a little stiff. So I break sticks the beginning of the tour. And then there's the sweet spot. There's like a 2-week period in the middle of the tour where I'm nice and relaxed. My technique is good. I'm playing comfortably, and I don't break any sticks. And then at the end, I start breaking sticks again. And it's because I've been doing it every night. I'm in a routine. So I start playing too hard. It's easy for me to play. And that does, any of you drummers out there know that does actually reflect poorly on my technique. But I find that either my ears wear out and I start just getting accustomed to that intensity and that volume level. And I think I have a tendency to get so comfortable that I take some liberties and probably play harder than I need to. So I have noticed that per tour, there's this little arc that always happens. But I have not noticed per song. But now that you ask me that, I'm going to pay attention, and we're going to follow up a year from now, and I'm going to let you know.
Nice. No, that's awesome. And the one thing that was kind of cool from the segment that you were just talking with Steve is when you were talking about, you know, your influences and being a Paul Rudd guy and an AC/DC fan and stuff. Even though you had said that you were already a fan of Skid Row and that you were a fan back to the first record, it also had to be pretty cool. Like once that gig became established too, just musically and kind of like sonically with that, because it's actually pretty well documented, at least from my understanding, that there did feel to be a stylistic hard rock change to Skid Row's style around the
Yeah.
time that they did the Pantera tour. So I feel
Yeah.
like stylistically with the band, it was we're super stoked for you that the gig worked out and that you're still there to this day. But that had to be also pretty cool, just musically, that you're already a hard rock guy, and they kind of went that route, regularly kind of credited to that tour. So it
Yeah.
seemed like it has a bit of a natural fusion for you.
It definitely does. Yeah. So you mentioned that tour specifically. One of the things that tour did for a band like Skid Row, it really, nobody at that time, nobody within the organization at that time was thinking 20 or 30 years down the road. Well, and at the beginning of that tour, nobody really knew what a massive band Pantera was going to go on to be. They were at one point, they were such a massive band, and it was really cool to see that. But looking back on it 20 or 30 years later, it did allow a band that originally came from the late 80s hard rock scene, what a lot of people call hair metal, and I understand where that term comes from. It's not my favorite term, but I understand where it comes from, and it's not an inaccurate term. But it showed the musical diversity of Skid Row to then follow up with a heavier record and take a band like Pantera out as direct support for that entire tour. It really showed some of the diversity and some of the depth of Skid Row musically, but it opened a lot of doors for the band. And this many years later, there is a little bit of crossover. It's one of the things I do love about Skid Row. We can go and play events or do shows with bands that might be a little bit more on the melodic side, and we can go out and play with heavier bands too, because all throughout the timeline and the history of Skid Row, there's crossover, but there's a relationship to, and most musicians are listening to a lot more of a diverse section of music than what they may do in their context of working. I find that to be true. I know most musicians I know, whether they play in a hard rock band or in a country band or even a bluegrass band, even somebody in a bluegrass band, they'll tell you when they go to a bar on a Friday night and Guns N' Roses comes on or something like that, it's funny to see how diverse a lot of musicians' interests actually are. So for a band like Skid Row, it really has kind of pulled these different fringe genres into the timeline and the history of the band. That's been a really cool thing to see as an outsider, and then when you see it from the inside, it becomes even more obvious.
Absolutely, 100%. Metal Summoners, we want to let you guys know, we also want to be very respectful of Rob's time, that we have him for about 45 minutes, so we're not that far away from that. So we want to thank you guys for tuning in with us and rocking out. Angel, I'm going to kick it back up to you as we do the final spin around between you and Steve. And Rob, one more final thing real quick from me.
Yeah.
I just want to
I'm having a great time. If you guys want to go a little long, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah. No sweat. We'll still keep it in the ballpark. But one thing I did want to tell you, because I know scenarios like this probably do happen on the regular, and I don't totally expect you to remember this, but back when you had Tony in the band, you guys played Maryland Live Casino in Annapolis, Maryland. And it was really awesome. It was such an amazing gig. You guys absolutely killed it. But after the show, you, me, Rachel, and a couple of other fans just went out to this local bar, and we just kind of kicked it in the area for a little while. And I don't remember the name of the bar. And then we all kind of went back towards the hotel, and then we all kind of went off on to our separate ways and stuff like that. But just as far as a fan that got to kick it with you guys for a little bit and have a drink and just talk a little bit, that was just really, really cool. And I did want to take a moment to just thank you for your and Rachel's hospitality for letting some fans just kind of hang out with you guys after the show.
That's very nice of you to say. I hope I didn't stiff you with the tab. I hope I settled my tab before the end of the night.
I don't remember anything bad happening.
Yeah, I do remember although, you know, we definitely visited the local watering hole after the gig, so I'm sure I don't remember all the details from that night, but that was a great night. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. Is that casino still there? Is it?
It is.
It is. Okay.
Yeah, it would actually be, and again, I honestly, I don't know who to contact and I have no idea how that works, but they completely revamped that area of the casino. The
did.
casino is still up and kicking and thriving, but instead of that smaller little sit down live venue that you guys played on for that, which is still great because I've seen the band Rubik's Cube there a million times.
Oh
and
yeah.
friends with a lot of those guys, you know, Steve-O and Sherry and all those guys. But
Yeah.
they revamped an area of the casino and it is like a full on concert venue now.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah, I saw Flogging Molly there and it really blew my mind because like the sound is there, like it's a proper big open floor, like proper stage, big lighting and all that kind of stuff. So
that's awesome.
Again, I don't know how that would work, of course, through your booking agents and stuff like that, but that would be a really cool opportunity for maybe you guys to circle back around to that venue and get to see it now that it's just like a full-on like venue as opposed to like,
I would love to
this stage in the casino. I think that would be super cool.
Well, we'd love to get back there at some point.
Absolutely, for sure. Angel, let's kick it over to you, my friend.
I've seen you perform at M3. I just gotta ask, what's the coldest gig that you've ever done?
Oh my goodness.
And how do you handle that?
There was a gig. Well, it wasn't the coldest gig, but I can tell you the coldest place I ever went to was Moscow, Russia, and this was a handful of years ago. Rachel and I we actually flew out a couple days early and just decided to lay over in London and goof around for a couple of days. And we flew into Moscow the day before the show. And I have never experienced cold like I did that first night when I got there. I actually remember at one point in my hotel room, opening my suitcase and just sitting in my room, staring at my suitcase. And I said, if I do this correctly, if I do this right, I can put on every single piece of clothing that is in my suitcase. I was that cold. On stage, I do recall a gig outside of Denver, Colorado many years ago that was brutally cold. That's the coldest I can remember, but I can't tell you. I wish I could tell you exactly how cold it was. It was difficult. It was difficult to get through. Numb hands and being a drummer it's not a good combination. And it was one of those gigs you couldn't break a sweat no matter what you did. You just could not. You couldn't warm up. You couldn't break a sweat. So I wish I could remember what the temperature actually was, but that was probably the coldest one I can remember.
And I'm gonna do my final question, and then do one other fan question.
Okay.
What Skid Row song do you still want to play live that hasn't been played live yet?
Oh no! Oh damn! Hang tight for just a second there, Metal Summoners, because we will get Rob right back in here in just a moment. But we do want to take this opportunity to thank you guys again so much. Okay.
Hey, there you go.
Hey.
Sorry, everyone at the Metal Summit. My Wi-Fi is not cooperating. That's my mistake. Okay.
No worries.
Yeah.
Angel, do you want to hit Rob with that question again, just in case he didn't catch it?
What Skid Row song do you still want to do live that you still haven't done live yet?
Oh, okay. Good question. Good question. I've always loved Can't Stand the Heartache off the first record. I have never played it. Wow, that's a good question. That's the first one that comes to mind. I'm gonna stick with that as my final answer for now. But I'll get back to you if I come up with another one. But I'm gonna stick with that one as my final answer. What song do you want to hear that we have never played?
Okay. All right, darn it.
Or that you've never heard us play?
Breaking Down. I've never heard you play that one.
Okay, that's a good one. At least with my time with the band, we've only done that at special. We've done a few like radio shows where you do an acoustic set or something like that. That song lends itself really well to that setting. So we've done it a couple times in situations like that, but it has not been a part of the set. There are a few songs off of Thick Skin. Now that I'm thinking of it, Born a Beggar is probably one that I would love to play off of Thick Skin. So maybe Born a Beggar, Breaking Down, and Can't Stand the Heartache. That maybe we'll. I'll see what I can get the guys to do.
While I've technically heard it live, I would really, really love for you guys to play off of Thick Skin. I Remember You Too. That just like rocked out hard, heavy version of I Remember You. I would really like to see that.
You know, I do love I love the concept of that. It's fun to see a band take something as iconic as a song like that from their history and their catalog and have some fun with it. And when I say have fun with it, they weren't attempting to be silly or there's no silliness to it. They just took that song and just for fun took a completely different take on it. So I'm a fan of that as well. I'll see what I can I'm putting together a set list of special requests here, so I'm going to make a note of that as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Didn't Rachel sing that?
Well, I did
On the album,
that?
I'm saying. I thought, or was it Johnny and Rachel?
You know, that's a really good piece of trivia that I should. I'm going to look into that. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm going to look into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious. Okay.
Fan question. What is your favorite tour story?
Oh, that I'm allowed to tell?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so we played. I'm going to say it was 2014. We played in Vienna, Austria, with Ugly Kid Joe. And it was the last night. Skid Row had shows in a couple of days. We had a couple of days off, but they ended up being travel days. So it was our last show with Ugly Kid Joe. And we were going to travel on to Italy, I believe. So it was a good couple days of driving in the bus and traveling. So we decided to have a little fun after the gig in Austria, in Vienna. And I'm not necessarily proud of it, but I had entirely way too much to drink. And I ended up getting lost in Austria, which is a beautiful city. And the reason I know that is because I walked around for hours. I could not find the hotel room. And then I got to the point where I could not find where the bus was parked. So I know everyone out there thinks that I'm a complete idiot, but what you need to understand is this was pre-international cell phone plans. So I had a cell phone, but I had to be connected to Wi-Fi in order to do anything with it. So I wandered around the city for hours. I wandered around until the sun came up, only to find out that the hotel, if I had just walked straight out of the back door, past the bus and walked about 100 yards down the street, the hotel was a straight walk, 100 yards. And I walked around for hours. I think I saw the entire city of Vienna, not on purpose, but I love telling that story. I know it doesn't make me sound like a very intelligent person, but it's just one of those experiences that I love telling the story. I love looking back on it. That was an amazing tour of the city that I never planned to have. So that's one of the stories I love to tell.
Oh, how was it playing with Lizzie Hale?
She was amazing. So anybody who was either at any of the shows or has seen any of the footage, she was great. It was so much fun for us. It was an honor to play with her. We're all fans of her, both on stage and personally as well. They've always been very supportive of Skid Row, and to have the opportunity to do something like that was really cool. I can tell you she was as much of a pro as you would expect. She came in with I think we did one rehearsal in the venue the day before the first show, and she crushed it. She was great and super cool to work with. So I have nothing but great things to say about our experience with her.
Steve, your final question and thoughts.
Okay.
Are you
It's actually,
speechless? Are you speechless for the first time since I've known
I would
you?
say so.
Are you actually
Yeah, probably.
speechless? All
So
right.
it's actually like a three-parter question.
Okay.
Of course.
All right.
Okay. First question is,
Okay.
have you ever met Sebastian?
I've never met him. Never met him.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Secondly, let me see. All right. Now, the last 3 years in a row, you and I have run into each other in Manhattan, some way
That's
or
correct.
form.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Besides, and this is totally out of Skid Row thing. This past year was at Marvelous 3 and Lit.
Correct.
The year before that is when you took your chick to go see the Rockettes.
That's
And I
correct.
told you I was, remember, and I
Yeah.
won that competition to take a dance lesson with the Rockettes, which
Yes,
I
which
still
was
have to text it to you.
you absolutely do. I feel like we should do an episode on that alone, but we
Okay.
can schedule that later. But at some point, I think we should do an episode on that.
Right. So you coming into the city to see, coincidentally, Marvelous 3 and Lit, and I know those guys are like Nashvillians and some of them live in Georgia and everything.
Yeah.
Besides those guys and your bandmates, like who are your like, and I know you're close with like Ryan Spencer Cook and the guys of that band too.
Right.
Like Ace or Gene's band, whichever day
Yeah.
you're talking about it. But I want to know,
Yeah.
like,
What time is it?
yeah, what day it is. It's Ace's band? No, it's Gene's band. So the question is, like, out of all those bands, besides those, like, who's your like rock star bud that you can like you hang with the most out of everybody? Like, we would know.
Oh, that's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rockstar Bud.
Yeah.
Well, we're not buds, but I can tell you who the coolest guy I think I've ever met in my entire life was.
Do tell.
Brian Johnson. Was absolutely, yeah, he was absolutely the the experience that anybody would ever want to have when you meet somebody like that, and certainly somebody who's that big of a I'm going to say superstar. He will argue with that, but he's a superstar, right? So it's Brian Johnson, and it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. Again, we're not buds. He's not. It's not like he's not coming over tomorrow for Christmas Eve dinner. Unfortunately, he was otherwise engaged. That's a really good question. Man, there's so many cool people in the music world. That's a tough one.
Okay.
Yeah, Damon Johnson. A lot of your viewers are probably gonna know who that is. That's
Absolutely.
a guy. Yeah, that's a guy he's so talented, and he's been doing it for a long time, and what he's been able to accomplish, and some of the things that he's been associated with or involved in. He is probably one of the most humble, nicest people I've ever met. He's just a dude who loves playing guitar. He just happens to be incredibly hardworking, and as a result, he's very, very, very talented. He deserves all the accolades and the attention that comes his way. But he's probably one of the most humble, down to earth, nicest people I've ever met. And I see him on a somewhat regular basis. He has a long relationship with Skid Row and some of the guys in the band. So he's a name I would throw out. There's so many. There's so many people that I look up to and admire, and they'll tell you that they're no big deal, but I admire and appreciate what they do, and they're super humble and super nice people. But those are a couple names I would throw out.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
Nice.
yeah.
super
Who's
awesome.
who's the biggest jerk you've met so far? Let's go around
Jerk?
the room. Let's go
Like-
around the room. I want to know. I want to know who's. No,
Like,
you
who's
don't
been a
have
jerk?
to talk trash about anybody. I'm kidding.
Well,
Who's the nicest? Let's go around the room. This is a good question. Who's the nicest guy or nicest musician artist that you've met?
Hmm. All right. Could someone go first? Because I'm still thinking.
Of course.
Well, when it comes to like, and when it comes to like, because of like M3 and stuff like that, we've definitely been very like fortunate to go with that. I'll probably say that like now, just over time, just getting to know him over the years, his bodyguard is actually a dear friend of mine as well. But like Steven Adler has treated
Oh,
me
yeah.
so great over the years.
Yeah.
Like
He's a
every
sweetheart.
time I see him, it's hugs and kisses. Like he's
Yeah.
always such a great guy. So
Yeah,
from
and that's
somebody that you could obviously connect to, the biggest band in the world, at
Yeah.
one point, if not still.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, like Steven Adler from GNR. I mean, that would probably be my vote. As far as
Okay.
somebody that I always love to meet whenever I can, whenever she comes to town, because she's such a sweetheart. I mean, I don't think anybody will ever find anything bad to say about Doro Pesh. I mean,
You know what? I've heard. I've met her in passing a couple of times, but everybody says the same thing, that she is just a wonderful person. She's very kind, very generous. Steve Adler, I've never had anything but wonderful experiences with him as well.
Yeah. So those would be my two.
Okay. All right.
Guys,
are we sorting out the naughty?
Did anybody else want to chime in on their happy experiences before we let Rob enjoy his day?
I'm gonna
We're
say
sorting out the naughty and nice list on the day before Christmas, right? That's
I
what we're
know.
doing. Yeah.
okay. Anton Fig. Right.
Oh wow. Okay. So Anton Fig, that would be a cool one. That would be a cool
Played
one.
on- He played on Ace's solo album. For everybody that doesn't know, he also played on he played on Unmasked, and he also played on Dynasty. But you did
That's
not
right.
hear that from me. So just saying.
Yeah, it's already out there. I'm not going to throw you under the bus. That rumor's been out there for a while. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to meet him.
Right. As much of a nervous wreck I was, John Bon Jovi was very nice.
Oh,
That's
cool.
Wreck
Cool.
I was.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Steve, for asking for a picture for me.
Were you
You're welcome.
you were too nervous to ask for a picture? Is that right?
Yeah, he was freaking out.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve had to like slap me around, like step out of it, dude. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Picture.
Dude,
Okay.
I know that feeling. And so I met a drummer that I admire and look up to. And when I say I made a complete ass out of myself because I was so nervous, I decided in my conversation with him, and this is a drummer that I have been following for a very long time, and he plays in a band that I was a big fan of, and still am, but I've been following their career for many, many, many years. So I had the opportunity to meet him, and I was so nervous. I made an attempt to really prove to him what a big fan I was by mentioning a little moment in their career, in their timeline. I wanted to really endear myself to him and bond with him and show him and prove that I'm not just saying it, I'm a real fan. So I mentioned a specific drum thing on one of their albums, and he paused for a second. He let me go through my whole speech, and he paused for a second. And then he quickly reminded me that wasn't him that played on the record. It was someone else. And as soon as he said it, it, but it was too late to do that. Myself, that's a fun story to share with people. So I understand the feeling of being very nervous when you meet somebody, but luckily you didn't do what I did.
Luckily, I had Steve there, who was kind enough to ask that question for me.
That's great. That's great. So.
That's awesome for sure. But Rob, man, we can't thank you enough for giving us some of your afternoon. And the biggest thing for myself, Angel, and Steve is always that, you enjoyed yourself. You had a good time. You felt respected. You liked the questions that were asked of you, and that overall you felt that this was worth it and, beneficial to you and to Skid Row's continued success.
This is great. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you you taking the time, and I appreciate the invitation to hang with you guys for a bit.
Yeah, we definitely
Absolutely.
appreciate.
You're always welcome to come back.
Awesome. We got a few things to follow up on.
Always welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Of course, our pleasure, man. Metal Summoners, thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for supporting Rob and Skid Row and everything. Make sure that you're paying attention to their socials for the announcements next year, whenever they're ready to come out, to let everybody know about the status of the new Skid Row singer, as well as tours, new music, and all that fun stuff. Make sure that you guys are supporting the Metal Summit on both Facebook and on YouTube. That's where you're watching Rob right now. So always make sure that you subscribe to those two pages so that way you can see these interviews. And always make sure that you're also following the Metal Summit on Instagram, because that's where we put out the guest announcements first. You can follow Angel at Angel Alamo 78 on Instagram. You can also find him on Facebook. You can find The Real Psycho Steve at The Real Psycho Steve on Instagram. You can also find him on Facebook as well as his website, psychostevepresents.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at salem.vampire. You can also find me on Facebook as well. But again, thank you all so much, Metal Summoners. Have yourselves an absolutely fantastic holiday week. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah to everybody, and have yourselves an absolutely great week. We're going to get back to you at our normal time next Wednesday for a brand new episode of the Metal Summit. So over the next weekend, we will put out the guest announcement for it. So we're going to let everybody enjoy their holiday weekend, and Metal Summoners, we'll see you guys in about a week and a half. On behalf of Rob Hammersmith, we want to thank him again for taking time out of his day to rock out with us. Metal Summoners, we will see you very soon. Be good, have a great holiday, and just enjoy yourselves. Take care. We'll see you soon. As always, you've been watching the Metal Summit.